how to get the most out of your implementation. So I am Eloise, I'm a digital advisor team leader here at Odoo. And for the context of this talk, I will play the role of a nosy customer.
My name is and today I will be playing the advisor teaching our client how to this talk is going to be a bit different. It's not going to be 1 hour long like the past. We have 4 different talks. And so for this, we also have feel free to scan it. There's also a URL on the bottom.
So basically, for the next 2 hours, we'll venture together through the entire journey of an Odoo implementation. So from start to finish. So basically from designing the plan of the implementation through to optimizing the final solution. So we'll have 3 different talks given by amazing colleagues of the Quick Start team. And thanks to them, you will discover all the secrets of an implementation. But first, we are going to reveal you a secret. Please. So, did you know that actually implementing an Odoo project is exactly like building a house? You might wonder why. Well, because the goal is exactly the same, to deliver a project on time and on budget.
And it's just as difficult as it is impactful. Did you know that over 50% of proprietary implementations fail, and less than half of EU SMEs, or small medium-sized businesses, actually have a management software in place?
It actually rings a bell to me, Richard, because I tried to implement a project a few years ago, and it was a nightmare, really a nightmare. We were spending so much time in meetings, and nothing was moving forward. And on top of that, I spent so much money.
I'm not surprised by that. It's quite often that implementations end up being too complex and too expensive, which is why we essentially have the implementation methodology here in place. But those failures are actually our opportunity to thrive. Essentially, you learn more when you fail, of course. But essentially, we have a client, for example, that in the past who tried to disregard our Odoo implementation methodology. They wanted to match their previous system, customize it, the views, the functionality, to match their previous software entirely. Also, the CEO was the SPOC, so they didn't have any time whatsoever to implement the project, and after 2 years, they weren't anywhere.
Okay, I see I'm not the only one who had struggled with implementations. But then, would you say that this is why Odoo was created, actually, to transform those failures into successful implementations?
That's exactly right. As you can see, essentially Odoo's mission and goal is to come up with a software to help people, SMEs, and employees do more in less time, essentially become more efficient and have an easy-to-use software to do their daily tasks very easily.
Yeah, I have this friend who installed Odoo a few years ago, and he told me that it was a real game changer. Before, he used to spend like, I think, 30 seconds to record one invoice. And now with Odoo, he can actually record 30 invoices in 1 minute. This is what his desk looks like before. So then, Richard, can you tell me, what is it that service that you offer?
The service that we offer, of course, is the Quick Start service. The whole, essentially, we come up with a name with it from the original beginning. When the service was first introduced, we wanted to come up with a name that was matched our goals, our mission, and really encapsulated what we were looking to accomplish, the Quick Start team.
Okay. Me? Him? Me? Okay, sorry. It's too close. Ah, closer.
Just eat it.
Yeah. Is it better now or still not? Okay. Is it better now? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so you were talking about the Quick Start service, but that does not help me understand your service at all, Richard.
Well, the whole point of the service is actually in the name, the Quick Start team. The whole idea is to get a client up and running, implemented as quickly as possible, on time and on budget.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
But we do this by following our Odoo implementation methodology. Here we go.
Oh, thanks, nice.
Essentially, it's a implementation methodology that turns standard implementation on its head a little bit by disregarding common practice of the client is always right. Essentially, we challenge every single request, within reason, of course, to essentially come up with what they actually really need in order to solve their actual problems, not their symptoms. For example, why would you customize a car that you have without actually test driving it first?
Yeah, it's true that it's super different from usual implementations. But then I have a question what is the reaction of your clients actually to that methodology? Don't they get frustrated because all or their requests are constantly challenged?
Yes, but clients will be frustrated no matter what we do. It's kind of like learning a new hobby. It takes time, it takes practice. Essentially, you need to incorporate change management into your implementation process. I have a whole step to discuss it and go over it. Because at the end of the day, we want to replace without replicating your previous software. Otherwise, why bother even changing software to begin with? But we will learn more about all these different processes through the next talks that are coming in the next hour and a half.
Okay, yeah, it's true that change management is a real challenge and that it's super important to anticipate it actually. Just like, for example, those butterflies.
Those butterflies, exactly.
Change management for those butterflies too. Anyway, how do you know it's working, that implementation methodology?
Well, we know it's efficient because we failed a lot, but we, of course, succeeded a lot. And essentially, through all these different failures, we adapted, we revised, we fine-tuned to come up with what we have today, where we are at roughly 95% success rate of most of our implementations, which is a stark difference from other platforms.
Okay, yeah, seems quite good, 95%. But then, how does this work, this quick start thing that you're talking about?
Well, as I mentioned before, or we mentioned before, it's kind of like building a house. The first step is, of course, to fully understand your needs and what your client wants. For example, if you want kids, we will need to include a room for them and maybe a play area as well.
Yeah, it's true that I would prefer a house that fit my needs. Anyway, how do you conduct this analysis then?
Essentially, the first step of the analysis is, the analysis requires a few different skills that all of our consultants have. So first off, it's asking the 5 whys. Then it is the forgetting about Odoo entirely, and then, of course, active listening.
The 5 whys? Why?
Not quite. I mean, if you can get away with fewer whys, then, of course, you can do that. But essentially, the idea is to ask enough questions to get to the root cause of what they're looking for. Essentially, because you don't want to solve for a symptom, you want to solve the problem. For example, if a client tells you that why they do something and it's just because, we've always done it, that's when you know you need to dig further into it to understand more about what the requirements are. It also is a sign that either A, they have no experience with implementation, or B, they have the wrong mindset for efficiency.
Okay, but then what would you recommend for someone that implements an Odoo project for the first time?
Well, for the analysis process, as we mentioned before, forget about Odoo entirely. It's important to fully understand their needs and how they do things and why they do things the way they do. It's a form of active listening.
Active what? Sorry, I was not listening at all.
As usual. Essentially, the whole point is to forget about Odoo, because as they're conducting your analysis, you're understanding the requirements, the needs. If you're thinking about the solution before you understand everything, you're missing some stuff as well. Once the analysis has been completed, you can actually start planning and putting together a budget, understanding the next steps. And one other piece of advice is that this takes time, so don't rush it.
Okay, I think I'm starting to understand this first analysis phase. But then, yeah, what do I need to do, if I want to know more about that?
Well, of course, I can talk about this whole thing for hours on end. However, what kind of manager would I be if I didn't share the spotlight? So if you want to learn more about the initial process, the steps of the implementation methodology, you can join the amazing Nicola. He's here, and he will be here in this room afterwards. He's right there. You can wave at him. You can get his autograph later if you want. He'll be here at 11 a.m.
Okay, so let's recap. First step is designing the plan. Right, but then what comes next?
Then we start building.
We start building, but shouldn't we start with the foundations of my house first. Like, I don't want my house to collapse because it does not have the right foundations.
You're absolutely correct. The foundation is the most important first step, which is the MVP.
The MVP? Like, most valuable player. I am your most valuable player.
Not really. But essentially, the MVP stands for minimum viable product. It's whatever you need, the minimum requirements you need in order to get up and running or live in the system, or in this case, maybe even living in your house. Maybe you don't need the second floor right now, but you can live on the first floor.
It actually rings a bell to me. I have this friend who launched like a startup a few years ago. And of course, he went for Odoo. And when he first entered in contact with the digital advisor, they had to decide, of course, with which apps to start, which phases. And well, because it was a startup, the first thing he needed was cash in order to ensure the survival of the business. And this is why, actually, with the digital advisor, they decided together to start with the sales flow, such as the sales application and so on, to make sure that cash was entering the company. What would I say?
Well, essentially,
yeah, and so it's true. So yeah, once those, I would say, minimum requirements, or should we say like must-have, have been implemented, what do we do next?
Well, after the walls have been built and MVP 1 is completed, we essentially then focus on the next steps, MVP 2, MVP 3, repeating these steps until we have the final product at the end. All the must-haves at the first, nice-to-haves at the end. This can take some time, of course, so you just got to be patient, but as long as you're living in the house or using the software, you're actually benefiting from your initial investment. However, if you also want to learn more about our implementation methodology, you want to actually test it, you want to get live today, perhaps start a new database or import that data set that you really don't want to do, you can actually come test our services in Palo 7 all day, every day, next to the bar.
Yeah, I think I will sure go because this is exactly what I would need. But then, Richard, would you say that an implementation is a bit like a continuous circle? Because if I understand correctly, first step is you define the essentials. Second step is you implement them, and then you add an additional layer to it?
Exactly, yes. It may sound repetitive, but it's actually a sign of a healthy project. And if you want to know more about all these different steps, the petition, etc., you can join the amazing Maxime's here again at 11:30. Be there, or be square.
Okay, well, I think we have a house.
Well, c'est plus le poupette. Hold on. We have actually a surprise for you.
A surprise?
Yes. We actually have an internal revolution going on here at Odoo that we've been focusing on over the last couple months.
Okay, an internal revolution, but tell me more about it.
Essentially, the whole idea is to become digital advisors. Well, so essentially you have a house, of course, right? Great. But let's say, for example, that you want to plan for the future. Maybe you want to have kids. We need to build a room for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want kids in the future, but I do know for sure that I would like my house to be eco-friendly. Or, you know, I'm a freelancer, so maybe I would like an office with a waiting room for my clients.
Well, fortunately, it's the same next steps. The whole idea is to understand your needs, anticipate your needs as well, the future plans, and essentially provide them for you before you know it. For example, let's say you want to make your house more eco-friendly, so you need solar panels, for example. Maybe you don't know that solar panels can be subsidized by the government. Well, we will anticipate this. We'll let you know that you can have subsidies and help you navigate that. We'll also make sure the house is built in such a way to retain heat during the winter and stay cool during the summer. And then we can also make that waiting room of yours, or that laundry room, into a waiting room for you.
So are you actually saying that my waiting room could be my laundry? That's perfect. My clients could do my laundry. That's beautiful. Thank you, Richard. But, okay, you're talking about revolution, about quick start. Like, what is the link between both, the digital revolution?
Well, of course, everyone can implement software. We can essentially help you set up a database. We can train you. We can configure. We can even import that data set. However, that's not as exciting as it could be to build a relationship with you as our client. So essentially, as we mentioned before, we'll understand your market, what you're looking for, and to help you anticipate your needs, maybe come up with a new sales program, etc. So that way we can help support you in your growth and evolution moving forward.
Well, that's exactly what I would need, Richard. Thank you. Okay, what if I want to go further then?
If you want to learn more about this, you can actually join our amazing Celine and Victoria here again at noon, who are spearheading this innovation and change internally at Odoo, who will be able to answer all your questions relating to that.
Okay.
Hope to see you there.
I think now we have a house and we can move to the next hall then.
Yes, we can, absolutely. And don't forget, stay awesome. Oh, and questions. Let's see. Oh, QR code, scan it.
Are there questions or?
We'll find out in a second.
No.
So far, no. Soon, yes. Someone's typing. We also have it here. Yeah. What are the
main pain? Okay, maybe you can answer the first one. So the first question is, what are the main pain points for clients that
the main pain points that they miss? Well, I think we talked about change management briefly. I think it's a underrated and underappreciated point to pay attention to, because yes, of course, management wants to implement new software for efficiency, et cetera, but it's also important to know that get everyone else on board, make sure everyone actually uses the system, the key users, the actually people doing the work, which is exactly why Odoo's mission is to come up with software to do more with less time, make it easier, user-friendly, so that way you can actually reports are useless without the data, right? So the data needs to be easy to enter. So you also need to get the key users onboarded and interested in it, and otherwise you're not going anywhere. Because if you have them, if they're not on board, you can fail. For example, I had a client that loved Odoo. They needed it. They absolutely wanted it. But their accountants literally sabotaged it. They entered the wrong data to make sure it couldn't be usable, so they had to switch back to their old platform. So change management is something really important.
Be careful with accountants.
Yes. What about data imports?
What about data import? When to do them? Well, I would say actually it depends, of course, the type of projects that you have, or the size also of the implementation pack that you have. Usually at Odoo, what we do them is we try to do them at the beginning of the project in order to be able to work also with real data for your clients, because it's always more visible, or also for the end users to work with real data or data that they are used to work with. So that's why we try to do them at the beginning, most of the time, I would say.
But for example, historical data, you can wait till the end. It's a very common question. How about historical data? Can we import that right away? And it's natural and normal to actually want it in the system. However, the ROI is really low, because you might use it at first a lot. You may look at it 100 times a day. But as months go on, you're going to look at it less and less and less. So essentially, the upfront costs will be really, really high, but then you're not going to use it anymore. So it's quite useless. We do recommend, if you need it, you can keep it in Excel or read-only format. Some softwares allow you to do that, and you can look at it that way. And if you really want to do it afterwards, okay, sure. But go live first before you actually even touch that. One of the questions, I'll just quickly answer that, is where's the implementation methodology? You can actually Google it. It's on our website. You can get a PDF, go paper-free, save the environment. Or I have an extra one. If you really want it, I can actually wait. I can sign it if you want to. I'm just kidding.
You're not a star. But there is actually a new version of the implementation methodology book that will come out soon, with also the new branding of Odoo.
So I'll just wait for that one, unless you want the OG version. Some of our clients like to go live and all modules at once and then remove their old system. What's the best approach here? Well, you can, of course, pay for a subscription, and then it's like renting a house, right? Or renting an apartment. You want to move in right away as soon as possible to get that benefit. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to pay monthly for it or yearly and not actually use it. So, of course, clients want to go all up, a big bang approach, but if you can convince them on the smaller things, for example, one client that we have went live with just help desk, literally because that was their main pain point. Focus on why do you want to move to Odoo? What's the purpose? What's the real motivator? If it's to manage more tickets effectively, and that's like a pain point for you, go live with help desk. Or if you're having troubles managing your leads, just go CRM. These can literally go live in one day. that's our goal at Odoo, is to actually reduce the go live process to right away, so you can actually benefit from the software.
Yeah. How do you define that client must-have are really a must-have? That is the real battle that we have. Because, of course, what is essential for a client sometimes is not for us, as we have an outside look, I would say, to the client's business. So that is really a discussion that we'll have to have with the client. I would say that a real must-have is something that the client could not run his business without that feature. That would be, for me, according to me, a must-have is, okay, my client cannot live without that. Like, his business could not run in the first place if it doesn't have that feature. And you will see that along the discussions with the clients, most of the time, something that is a must-have for a client, sometimes after discussion, after asking why, so you remember the 5 whys that we talked about? So after asking those 5 whys, you kind of understand the root cause. And most of the time, you discover that this root cause is actually not really a must-have and can be maybe implemented in a later phase, okay?
Really ask, as Eloise mentioned, ask why. If you're not convinced, of course, be empathetic with the clients, be in their shoes, understand what their requirements are, behave like you're an employee and you're invested in their company's growth and evolution. And if you're not convinced after understanding everything and they can't explain it in a very clear, concise way, then it's not a must-have, it's a nice-to-have. You can also probably do a little bit of like math. If you want to calculate how much time it takes them to do something with, or to do that particular flow, and calculate, okay, how much time are you going to save if we customize or configure it this way? And if the cost of customizing it is higher than actually the time spent doing it, even after practice and training, then it's not worth it. Okay, let's see. We have a few more.
Yeah. No.
Actually, we can put this back up here.
How much time do you usually spend on analysis as percentage of project to make sure, I guess, the project is going well? So how much time do we spend on analysis? So you'll discover that with Nicolas, because basically the analysis phase is the first phase of the project. So it's what we call here internally the kickoff phase. And it's usually we tend to think that the kickoff is just a call. Well, it's not right. The kickoff, it's an entire phase. It might require several calls and so on. So it's really, I would say, an entire phase. And usually we say that it can go between like 10% or 20% of the project. But once again, it depends also how much time you have. For a smaller project, of course, it might go faster. For a bigger project, of course, it will take longer.
Of course, we don't want to go into too much detail because otherwise we take Nicolas' talk away from him. I really don't want to do that to you, sir. Let's see. It is, okay. Most of my clients have the CEO as the Spock, so change management is always a challenge. What tips do you have to handle this? No CEO wants to be told that their processes are not optimal. Of course, ego comes into play. It's a good question. It's just kind of, you have to build a relationship with them. You have to have them trust you, essentially, at the end of the day, which means telling them bad news. It means being not afraid to tell them, look, it doesn't take too much time, there's a blocking points. I mean, it's find a delicate way of doing it, but essentially if they trust you, they know that you're looking out for their best interest, the success of the projects, they will come to understand you. So maybe go on site if you can, build a relationship with them, become friends, go party with them, get hungover, I don't know, whatever you need to do to get their trust so that they will listen to you. That's the whole point of the digital advisor approach that we're trying to implement soon. Actually now, and you'll learn more with Celine and Victoria, is to build that relationship, build that trust so that you can go further and convince them of what they need to do.
And if I can add something on trust, we did actually a training internally to try to define what is actually trust with a client. And we realized that trust is based on basically 3 pillars. So you have the knowledge pillar, so show your clients that you actually know what you're doing. You have the benevolence pillar, so basically show that you care about your client. That's super important, so answer emails on time and so on. And also show that you do what you say and you say what you do. So show that you're integer. And once you have those 3 pillars, I can promise you that most of the time trust is there.
Of course, we can go into more of that if you have more questions later. Another quick one was what percentage of customers require for consultants to go on site from customers or partners? There's no percentage necessarily. We don't know. I mean, we encourage it, of course, but you have to weigh the cost benefits essentially. Does it make sense? I mean, Belgium's quite a small country. Some of our clients are in Belgium, so our consultants go on site whenever we can. We do push for it as much as possible. It is helpful to build that relationship, but also to really understand, because while they are, I mean, you can try to convince the client as well, but for example, you're on a screen, you're on a computer, it's easy to kind of forget that there's a person behind it and that there's like a real process. So it's really easy to disregard their must-haves by saying, oh, I don't see the benefit of it. But if you're actually there, living at their office, not necessarily living, but seeing how them actually perform the steps, it's so much easier for you to empathize, and then, okay, I can understand that we need to make this a priority. There's, I think, a few more questions, but it's also 10:56. Give you time to go to your next talk, and of course, for the setup for the next one. We'll be here all day. Not in this room, but around. Okay,
thank you, everyone.
everyone.
Have a good day.